Welcome back everyone to .NET on Azure, the beginner series. So far we've set up our development environment and then we looked at how to get a Blazor server app that talked to SQL Server up on Azure, deployed it into an app service, and then got that talking over to a SQL Azure database. So next up what we want to do is we have our Munson pickles and preserves application. It's reading over to Azure SQL, but what I want to do to it is I want to add some images to it. I want to add some blob storage. I want to be able to not only have an image of a pickle, an image of a beet, an image of some strawberry preserves, but what I want to do is when I add my review, I want to actually be able to see it, be able to put an image up with it running too. So that's what we're going to handle in this episode of .NET on Azure, the beginner series. We're going to start adding images into blob storage. All right, so the first thing that we have to do, like always, is go out to our resource group and then create the blob storage account. So as before, blob storages exist in things called storage accounts. And so a storage account has many different types of storages within it. It has blobs, which are things like images or any really binary files. It also has table storage, which are key value stores, and also queues, which are when you put data in, first out, it gets pulled out. We are really just going to be worried about the blob storage portion of Azure Storage Accounts. So like usual, pick the subscription, pick which resource group we want to have our blob storage account be part of, Munson East US, and then give it a name. So as we were going through, everything was called resource type, application name, where it lived, and then environment name, instance. Storage accounts can't have dashes in it. So we have to put everything together. So storage account, the abbreviation is just ST. So we'll call this ST Munson East US Dev 002. And then go select the types of redundancy we want and then the performance. And really that's all there is to it for storage account. Storage accounts, much like SQL database accounts, require a connection string in order to talk to it. So once this is done provisioning, we'll go into it, grab the connection string, and then put that in to our application. All right, this deployment has succeeded. I'll jump out over to the resource, and then the connection string can be accessed through the Access Keys menu on the left-hand side. It's called connection string. In order to copy it, I need to show it. Click copy, and then it's as easy as going into the secrets.json file and then putting it in there. So I'll just call it connection strings Munson, then finally storage. And then pasting in what I copied from the Azure portal. All right, so now the connection string is going to be within our app and we'll be able to use it just fine. And then when we wanted to deploy our app up the Azure, we just had to remember to copy in our connection string as we did with the SQL one from before. All right, but there's something else that's really cool with storage that we can do. The first off is that we can go through and browse everything that's in it. And that's using the Storage Explorer option from the menu on the left-hand side. And then I can go and view what's in the blob containers. And so a blob container sits within the overall blob architecture, and you can kind of think of them as individual folders within the blob storage account. And so let me add a container. And the container I'm going to add is called web. And then I can give it different access levels. And the access level I want to give here is called Blob. And so what it has is that anybody can go out and read the blobs that are in this container, but not anybody could write to it. And so this is great for putting images into. All right, so my web Blob container has been created. And so all I need to do then is add some images to it so we can have various product images in it. So I'll just browse for some files. And I'm going to add my strawberry, dill pickle, and beet images. Upload them. And then everything is accessible through URLs. So just by clicking on one, like the beet.jpg, I can go through and see the URL and have that brought down. Cool. But this is only available in East US. Or in other words, if I was on the other side of the world, if I was in Asia or even Europe, and I needed to access this, I would have to essentially navigate all the way to it, do a bunch of internet hops to get to it. What we can do is that we can actually put on top of Blob Storage a content delivery network, or a CDN. And the CDN then will live on the Azure Edge. So when I'm somewhere else, and when I'm on a different continent, I can hit that Azure Edge very quickly. And then on the Azure backbone, which runs much quicker than the regular public internet, I can go and get these images. Or various CDNs have caching algorithms and such, so my beet.jpg or dill pickle or strawberry could be cached at the Azure Edge and then returned even quicker. So let's go ahead and create that. And you can create it over the top of storage account. Super easy. Filter my left-hand menu down to Azure CDN, select it, and then I can just create one once everything pops up. So it wants me to create a new profile. So it's cdnp.munson, and I'm not going to give it a region because it's worldwide. So CDN profile Munson dev 001. Going to give it the Microsoft CDN pricing tier, and then the endpoint name CDN E, same as before, Munson dev 001. So again, sticking to our resource type, application name, environment, and then instance. And then finally, at the bottom, it's asking me, where do I want to be everything served from? And so what I'm saying here is I want it to be served from Blob Storage. Great. So I'll create it, and this actually takes a little bit of time to be provisioned out. All right, so our endpoint has been provisioned. We get the successful pop-up. And now I'll browse over to it, and now I have an endpoint host name. So I'm going to copy that. And what I can do is I want to make a quick note is I'm going to drop back over into my storage account from before and then browse to my Blob container over into the web container. Open up the beet and notice that when I browse to it, it has the storage account name followed by blob.core.windows.net/web/beet.jpg. All right, so let's get the CDN name again. So I copy in the CDN name over what the Blob storage URL is. And so now it's CDNE Munson-dev-001 Azure Edge.net. And now the same Beat account shows up. And I could do it for the other containers that I have within it as well. Or the other images that I have within it as well. Dill-pickle and strawberry-jam. All right, so what I want to do then is update my database. And so this is actually kind of cool too. I'm going to go into my SQL database, open up my query editor, attach as me, and then I can right-click and edit data from my products table, agree that it's a preview, all right, and then I could start putting what the photo URL is. So we'll put in dill pickle. Make sure strawberry jam works. It does. I had to hit save, so I'll redo the save for dill pickle. So this is neat that I'm getting a full-on data editor within the Azure portal. And then I can update Beat as well. So I don't necessarily need Azure Data Studio installed. I can do everything right here through the web. All right, cool. Everything is good. I have my data updated so it has a photo URL in it. So next thing what I want to do is actually pull down that data and display it in my app. So I'm going to edit the page that doesn't display and just add a new image element. And I'm going to make the source of it to be that photo URL. And I'm going to give it the style of making it height of, let's say, 200 pixels at most. All right, so let's go ahead and run this. And so then when I'm going to browse to my products, I should be able to pull down the images that we just uploaded to Blob storage behind the CDN. And there we have our deliciously dill pickle, our unbeatable beat, and then our sweet treat of the strawberry preserves. All right, so the next thing I want to do is actually upload a review image of the product into Blob storage. So the way I'm going to go about doing that is start using the Azure SDK. And so there's a couple different SDKs or NuGet packages that I need for this particular one, the Blob updating into Blob storage. All right, and it's called, as you would imagine, Azure.storage.blob. So I'll install that one, agree to it, and I also want to install the Microsoft.extensions.azure package. So I'll add that in. Now, I want to make sure to get my Blob storage client so I can dependency inject that into various other classes that I'm going to use. So I'm over in my main program.cs class. And the first thing I'm going to do is get a storage connection string and grab it from the builder. or grab it from the configuration. So this is the same thing that we put into our secrets storage before. Now that we have our Blob storage client, our Blob storage NuGet, and the extensions package added, we can start doing things like this. Builder.services.add Azure clients. And so this is going to help me configure all the Azure SDKs in one spot. Because I alluded to in the first episode is that once you know how to use one Azure SDK from the .NET world, you're going to be familiar with the rest of them. And so what I can do then is do Azure Builder .add Blob service client, and then just pass it in the storage connection string. And so now what I have going for me here is the Blob storage client that allows me to upload files is now built in. So I can now use it in various places to upload to storage. So let's see that. Let's see how I can upload to it. All right, I have a write review component. And so what I want to have here is two things. I'm going to be using the namespaces azure.storage.blobs and also azure.storage.blobs.model. And this right here, I'm injecting the Blob service client class. And then I'm using the input file Blazor control so I can actually upload my files. And then down in the load files function that gets called when a file gets updated, I want to actually get a container client. And so the container client, to grab it from the Blob storage, looks like this. I'm using my Blob service, which got injected into my class, get Blob container client. Now, you'll notice that I'm using logged in user. This logged in user comes in right up here. Right now, I'm just going to call it Matt. Eventually, when we start adding authentication and authorization to our app, I'm going to change that to whoever's logged in. So what this means is that each individual person who's using our application has their own container up in storage. It's going to come in useful. That way all the images aren't contained or are not all put into the same container. So if we have to delete somebody's images, it's going to be super easy. We can just wipe out that container and then it's all gone. All right, so we get that container client, which is going to access just that container. So is get Blob container client to get at it. All right, then the next thing that we're going to do is that we want to create it if it doesn't exist. So it's just container client. Create if not exists extinct. And then we want to tell it what public access type. So when we created the web container from before, we made it a blob access type. And that's exactly what we want to do here, where it has public access to the blobs, but not write access to the blobs. This means anybody can view our reviews and view the images that we uploaded, but not anybody can actually write to them. All right, so now we have the image that comes in here through the Blazor service in our input file event args. And so what I want to do is just give that a new blob name, rename it, and then what I need to do is upload it then. And again, I can do that to my container client. Container client, upload async, saying what I want the new blob to be named. So that's my new blob name. And then the parameter coming in, e.file.openReadStream. And then just passing in a max allowed size of 2 megabytes. All right, so let's go over this one more time. The container client here is getting off to a special container, which is going to be, in this case, Matt. And it's only for the logged in user. I'm going to create it if it doesn't exist, giving it read-only blob access, but read-write blob access. Read-only blob access to the public, but read-write blob access to the application. Give the blob a name, and then upload it right away. Okay, we should be able to run it and see our new review with a blob in it. All right, so our app is launched. So I'm going to go and leave a review for the red pickled beets. I'm going to choose my file. We'll choose the strawberry jam. It is not really jam. And you can see that the file is already uploaded as it's told me. I put that in there so I would know it's good. Hit save. And I go through and look at the red pickled beets, click on it, and I can see my new file has downloaded already. And if I go into the Azure Storage account, browse to everything, I can see there's a new container called Matt. And you can see there's a couple different files that's been uploaded. Great. So everything is up there now. I've gone through and was able to not only put a CDN around everything, I was also able to create a new storage account, a container within it just for me, for my user, and upload images to that and make sure I was able to then write to it and then view them later. So that's Blob Storages. And in the next episode, we're going to start talking about putting authentication around so we actually know who's logged in to our applications.